It's all out in the open now. They're trying to make you scared. Where once we heard about moderates, now jihad is everywhere. No more lying about Aisha and loving death. Now it's all about giving you your dying breath. That's This Week in Jihad's cold opener this week, ladies and gentlemen. It is a week in which there is a common thread, and that is that a lot of things that you used to be lied about all the time, now they are very much out in the open. And jihad is very much out in the open and active. And so we have the great David Wood here with us tonight as a special treat to unpack it all for us.
Plenty of stuff to unpack. Just sending out the link here while we're live with This Week in Jihad.
Yeah, you remind me of when there were records, when there were LPs, vinyl they call it now, and we would, when we were kids, would run it at lower speeds, and everyone spoke that way. Anyway, yes, we are here with David Wood, and there is a great deal to discuss. David, they're not even hiding it anymore, and I have found that there is a plethora of stories to that effect. Like, for example, we have Sharif Gindi, who I expect is a friend of yours, an imam in Michigan, who spoke last Friday at the, actually it was a few weeks before that, but memory just posted it, Friday sermon at the Islamic Organization of North America in Michigan, and he said, jihad is due. Jihad is happening. The Jews will not leave Israel except by force. Jihad means defending Islam with force. And I thought back, man, you remember very well.
I remember very well, indeed.
Why don't you tell our viewing audience about what it is exactly you remember in this connection?
Yeah, so one of the big campaigns of deception. What was this, about 10 or 12 years ago?
That's right.
It was a while back, but they came up with the "That's My Jihad" campaign. That's my jihad, and so what they wanted to say is, which is correct that the word jihad just means like striving or struggle or something like that. They want to say, hey, since jihad just means struggle, then anytime you're struggling, it's jihad. So don't stop associating jihad with actually fighting and defending the religion with force, power, and strength. It's just anything you're doing that you struggle with. So they kept putting these posters and billboards and signs everywhere saying, my jihad is getting up and getting to the gym. My jihad is getting my kids to school on time. My jihad is building bridges across the aisle. And they just said, I struggle to do all these things. And therefore, that's what jihad means. And it's just like so many other issues, whether it's Muhammad and Aisha or any of these other things, that what we were called liars and deceivers for saying 10 or 15 years ago, they now shout from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Meaning that we were right. We were speaking the truth when we were condemned by everyone, when politicians and journalists and everyone said, oh, these guys are lying. They're lying. How do you know we're lying? Because this Muslim says they're lying. So that means that when everyone was accusing us of lying, we were actually telling the truth. And that everyone who said we were lying, they were actually the ones lying. Where's our apology? Dang it.
Yep. Yeah, Pamela Geller and I had some good fun with that one. We ran ads before they changed the law to ban political ads, which by which they meant our ads, because other political ads they got no problem with. But anyway, they shut it all down in the courts. But before they did that, we had a great time with the My Jihad campaign, which was run by the Hamas-linked Council on American Islamic Relations, which is behind so much of this. And so we copied the exact design. You can't copyright a design. And we had people with actual quotes
from jihadis. Yeah,
exactly.
That's
and like killing Jews is worship that brings us closer to Allah. which a real Hamas guy really said on Hamas TV, and we had it on billboards, we had it on buses and such, and the media actually said we made up the quote. But it was 100% true. You can still find it. It's at Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute. It's at Jihad Watch. You can find it. This is not... actually, there was a guy who recently repeated it. And so what they said was true was completely false. You know, my jihad is especially that one building bridges across the aisle, as if they ever reach out to people who disagree with them with anything but hatred and venom. And anyway, everything they said was false was true, and now we got Sharif Gindi, and his jihad is defending the religion with force, power, and strength, which CARE would have condemned 10, 15 years ago. Let's see. Do you think they're going to condemn Sharif Gindi, David?
Nope.
By golly, I don't think so either.
Yeah, they'll if they're going to condemn anything here, it'll be you for pointing out what Sharif Gindi just said. That's the only time they have a problem with this, is when we repeat what a jihadi says, or what a Muslim leader says, or what the Quran says, or what the Hadith says. That's the only time it's bad, is when people are actually exposing it. I have to say, Robert, if I could go back in time, if I could turn back time, I go back to 2015 or whenever it was, and I'd run a billboard. And I'd have a cartoon of Muhammad, and Muhammad would be saying, my jihad is to walk after a night with the men of Al-Zut.
That was actually the end. It was when we put Bosch's cartoon that won the Muhammad art exhibit and cartoon contest in Garland, Texas, that was attacked by ISIS. We put that, or tried to, on buses and billboards in New York City. That's when they changed the law. They could not abide a cartoon of Muhammad, and I do understand, because they might have been looking at buses getting bombed, innocent people getting killed. In that regard, certainly, we wouldn't have wanted them to go up. But it's a shame that the situation has deteriorated, and even had so 10 years ago, to the point where you couldn't just exercise the freedom of speech, because this one group would be violent and everybody was kowtowing to them instead of standing up for freedom.
Yeah, and that happened in multiple places, because there was also the situation in New York where they were using all the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. They were posting all those signs on billboards and stuff, and the city was approving those, until Pamela Geller would do the exact same thing, but post the opposite. So she would say, no, side with Israel. And they say, no, you can't do this. And then they were reluctantly forced legally to do it out of consistency. And then at some point they just said, all right, no more political ads and so on. But it's just amazing that when it's coming from Islam, they're totally fine with it, until you say, can we actually say something that's true here, or say the opposite of what they're saying? And then we need to change the laws in our city.
Yep.
Bunch of cowards.
Yep. Oh, man, yeah. There's so many stories about how cowardly they are. But anyway, we've got jihad to deal with. Meanwhile, open jihad threats. Also in the Dallas area, where in Garland, Texas, 10 years ago, May 3rd, 2015, our Muhammad art exhibit was attacked by ISIS. A couple of jihadis from Phoenix drove all the way across to Dallas area, and they opened fire in the parking lot. They were killed out there by our security guys. And now, 10 years later, here we are. Nothing has been learned. A pro-Israel Christian event scheduled to take place in Dallas was indefinitely postponed due to threats made by, quote, radical jihadist elements in the United States.
Texas?
Texas.
I would anticipate that if there was a jihadi threat in Texas. Now, keep in mind, you can't stop someone from making the threat. You can't stop if they ran out and did something. But if it's, hey, you cannot have this event because we will attack you with our powerful jihad, seems like Texans could deal with that sort of situation. Oh, you're telling us we're the ones? Okay, well, it seems like a situation where like 10,000 people with guns would show up.
One would think. But I don't know if this is the Texas that we grew up knowing and loving, because Plano, Texas has been revealed. this week to have handed over $1.2 million to Islamic organizations tied to jihad terror, including an Islamic center under investigation by state and federal agencies over its plans for a Sharia enclave. That's Epic City, of course. The East Plano Islamic Center. The government of Plano, Texas gave $219,000 to the East Plano Islamic Center. How much money did they give you, David?
They didn't give me dime one yet.
Yeah, they ain't me either.
Can you imagine? Yeah, can you imagine all the if you're trying to subjugate the West and impose Sharia on everyone and make it like, oh, let's shower you with money. It's like, okay, we don't want to be subjugated. How dare you?
That's right. And so I don't know if Texas is really up to the threat here. Meanwhile, we got more of it being all out in the open in various ways. This is Wissam Haddad. And he's over in Australia. You can see that...
Flashing his gang sign.
Yep, flashing his gang sign. And he is a Muslim cleric in Sydney, Australia. He's being sued for alleged racial discrimination against Jews for a series of lectures he gave right after October 7th, maligning the Jewish people as vile. Where do you think he might have gotten the idea to use that word?
Couple places in the Quran, but you've got we're the worst of creatures. Isn't there? Don't some translations say the vilest of created beings or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's the one. Surah 98, verse 6, the most vile of created beings. And so he goes and gives a lecture that says that Jews are vile. He's just quoting Quran, and everybody's shocked, and he's getting sued. But
that's something else that happens over and over again. Matter of fact, that actually happened. You probably remember. Do you remember? And this is probably like 15 years ago when Hollywood celebrities, for some reason, jumped on board with this. But Hollywood celebrities all signed a petition condemning Hamas. But specifically what they condemned Hamas for was for saying in their charter that the end will not come until Muslims fight the Jews, and the Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "Ya Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." And it just said that. It just said Hamas declared in its charter that this would happen. And then all these Hollywood celebrities, actors and so on, producers, and everything, they all signed this document condemning Hamas, and the rest of us are going, they're just quoting Muhammad. Dude, they're quoting Muhammad. And you guys are all condemning it. But if we said it's Muhammad, you wouldn't condemn it. But if we say it's Hamas, you'll say, oh, yeah, we'll condemn that. But here's another situation. Oh, how dare this guy say something like this? Shame on him. What a bigot. What a terrible representative of Islam. I'm just quoting the Quran.
Yep. Yeah, you know, David Horowitz did that too. The late, great David Horowitz, with whom I had the privilege to work for many years ago. It was probably about 20 years ago, or 17 or 18 anyway. He called me up and he said, we're going to start this thing where we ask all the Muslim organizations in the United States to repudiate the hadith that says exactly what the one you just quoted, that the Muslim at the last hour will not come until Muslims kill Jews, and the Jews hide behind trees, and the trees say, "Oh, Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." And I said, David, they're never going to repudiate that. That's it's a strong hadith. It's taken for granted that it's authentic by believing Muslims. And he said, that's just the idea, that they'll all say this is part of our religion, we can't reject it, and it will raise awareness that this exists. And sure enough, it all happened exactly as he said. I went to all these Muslim organizations and asked them to reject the hadith, and none of them would do it. And so at that time, for a little while, people were talking about the hadith, but now, because here again, in those days, people cared about moderates, people cared about the idea of Muslims rejecting terrorism. They were upset about that kind of thing, but now everybody takes it for granted that this is just what they all think. And Wissam Haddad, actually, in response to this lawsuit, he said that his lawsuit is a battle between Islam and the kuffar. And it is, in a sense, is it not?
Yeah.
But this is the kind of thing where a few years ago, he would have been saying this has nothing to do with Islam and you're taking me out of context and this and that. And now he's just straight out, oh, we're having another battle between Islam and the kuffar. Okay, now we have another guy like that with this continuing our theme of it's all out in the open now. This is Tariq Yunus. And Tariq Yunus is he's a university lecturer at one of Britain's top universities, Middlesex University in Hendon. And he is proud to have contributed, he said, to Hamas. He totally supports Hamas, and he's working on a legal bid to remove the designation of Hamas as a terrorist group. Because after all, a few years ago, they would have all said, oh, we have nothing to do with Hamas. How dare you suggest that we're like Hamas? But now Hamas is mainstream. Everybody loves Hamas now.
And definitely will not be surprising if governments drop the terrorist designation and say, nope, these are just great freedom fighters and we hope they win.
Yep, because after all, the British government does hope they win and has been doing all they can to help them. Okay, same thing over in Pakistan. The Ahmadis. Now, you know that the Ahmadiyya are not considered Muslims in Pakistan. They're not even allowed to call themselves Muslims. They're not allowed to read from the Quran publicly. They're not allowed to have Muslim burials or call themselves Muslims even on tombstones. It's very strict.
Yeah, they get attacked. They get attacked like Jews and Christians and Hindus over there.
Yeah, and so I thought this was interesting though, because usually they don't talk about it this openly. But a Muslim cleric with Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, which is of course a jihad group, he says, we also don't say that we aren't going to kill. And he sounds like Ali Dawa here. He says, when we are in government, when Nizam-e-Mustafa, that is the ideal Muslim society, is implemented, a directive will be given from the top. Target and kill every Ahmadi in Pakistan.
And it's the most amazing thing about the Ahmadis is that they're among the quickest to defend Islam here in the West. They're some of the most confident defenders of Islam in the West, and they defend Islam, and they defend the Quran, and they defend Muhammad, and they defend the Hadith, and so on. As we're criticizing, it's just amazing. It's like, guys, if you protect Islam from criticism and Islam takes over, you guys are dead.
Mm-hmm.
You are dead and doomed. The only thing that is keeping you guys remotely safe right now is, one, you guys have a bunch of people in Western nations, and they actually moved their headquarters to the UK. They moved their headquarters to the UK just because it was more safe. But the only thing that's protecting them remotely in Muslim countries like Indonesia and Pakistan, where they are attacked, is because Western nations insist on protecting people, and in order to have any sort of good diplomatic relations, you can't be having these massacres regularly and so on. So it's just like with child marriage. It's just like with persecuting Hindus or Christians or something, that these Muslim nations actually have to do something to protect people because they don't want to be condemned by Western nations and have sanctions on them or something like that. So they reluctantly protect people and so on. Guess what? If Islam actually wins and takes over, all that's gone, right? The version of Sunni Islam that would take over would wipe Ahmadis off the map. And they're like, please, more Islam taking over. It's insane.
Yep. Oh, you'll like this too. The same cleric says, Allah willing, we will finish them off, and those Jews as well who nurtured them.
There you have it.
There you have it. They must be behind it.
Ahmadis nurtured by Jews.
Yeah, I mean, who else, really?
Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, who founded the Ahmadis, he was probably a Jew, a secret Jew. His real name was Mirza Ghulam Ahmedenstein.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'm speechless, David. It's such a beautiful thing because the thing is that these people are really beyond parody. You know, they're so absurd to start with. Anyway, meanwhile, we have more threats from Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and this is Saad al-Awlaki. I wasn't able to discover if he's related to Anwar al-Awlaki. Do you know if he is?
No clue.
Anyway, Saad al-Awlaki is the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And he wants Muslims in the U.S. He says there's 4.5 million Muslims in the U.S. And I thought that was interesting in itself, David, because a few years back, CARE was saying there were 8 million Muslims in the U.S. And I think, do you think 3.5 million Muslims have left the United States? What's up with that?
Is that Trump's deportations?
I think that CARE was exaggerating to increase its political clout, and that this guy is being more honest. But anyway, he says there's 4.5 million Muslims in the U.S., and listen to what he says. He says, do not consult anyone about killing infidel Americans. In other words, you don't need any permission to do this. And he says that if you're in the military, you should take your plane, if you're a pilot, and strike the Jews. He said Muslims in the U.S. should revive the tradition of assassinations, and that they should assassinate Trump, Vance, Rubio, Hegseth, Elon Musk, and their families, and make sure that in America and Europe there is not a single safe place left for the Jews.
Sounds about right.
This is the kind of threat that we saw in the 90s, actually, from Osama bin Laden, when he issued a couple of fatwas saying that it was permissible to kill American civilians because they supported the American government, which he said was at war with Islam and had invaded the sacred land of the Kingdom of Two Holy Places, Saudi Arabia, and that as a consequence, every Muslim had to defend the lands of Islam. And so every American, he said, was fair game. Saad al-Awlaki is saying much the same thing now. And we know what happened after Osama said that.
I was just looking up let's see. They're definitely related by tribe. Al-Awlaki is a tribe. It says Saad al-Awlaki was born in the town of Al-Shuba in Wadi Yasbam in the Upper Egypt district in Shabwa Governorate. He comes from the large Al-Awlaki tribe, the same tribe from which the spiritual father of Al-Qaeda, Anwar al-Awlaki, who was killed by an American drone in 2011, descends. So they're same tribe. They're same tribe, basically.
Well, I was looking for if there was an actual closer familial connection and couldn't find anything. But anyway. Okay, same tribe. We'll go with that.
Watch out for that Awlaki tribe, because they seem to suck.
Yes. And speaking of that, we have Mohammed Shahzeb Khan. Did you see this guy?
Nope.
He is a 20-year-old Pakistani national living in Canada. He also goes by the name Shahzeb Jadoon, and he was just extradited to the U.S. on Tuesday because he was plotting an attack in New York City on Jews. Let's see what he was going to do. He's going to enter the United States to carry out a deadly terrorist attack on a Jewish center in New York City. They were talking about a specific synagogue in Brooklyn. He planned to use automatic weapons to kill as many members of our Jewish community. This is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, speaking. He planned to use automatic weapons to kill as many members of our Jewish community as possible, all in support of ISIS. He wanted to he was talking, as is so often the case. He was talking to fellow Muslims who turned out to be undercover officers, and he said that we need good hunting knives so we can slit their throats. So there we go with the throats again.
And people don't realize how easy it is for a jihadi to get into the U.S. So you already have people in Western nations who agree with the ideology and so on, and they pretty common to carry out some sort of a terrorist attack or something. But Nabil, years ago, this was shortly after 9/11, he went on a trip to Pakistan, and he said they were offering to buy his passport from him. And so the way this would work is, and they offered him something like, I think it was like, this was a long time ago. This is almost, this was over 20 years ago. But they offer, I think he said it was the equivalent of like $20,000 for his passport. And what it would be is he would sell his passport to them. They would find the jihadi amongst them who looks most like him. And that jihadi would use the passport, go to the U.S. and so on. And then after that jihadi gets to the U.S., then Nabil would report that his passport is missing and go get it replaced and so on, do what he needs to do and so on. But anyway, that's pretty easy to do. People are traveling traveling back and forth all over the place. And hey, buy a passport. If you can't get there because they would know who you are or something like that, or they would look you up or find out what you're connected to, no problem. Just buy the passport of someone who kind of looks like you and roll with that. Who's going to notice?
It's actually very hard when you got one picture and you don't know the person and they might have changed their appearance in various ways. It's really not as easy as people think to make a positive identification. And I remember a guy way back in high school in the 70s, and everybody was trying to buy beer illicitly. And one guy borrowed the driver's license of some other guy, and so we're talking about two people who were very different in appearance. One of them was tall and thin, and the other one was short and not thin, and the person behind the counter didn't bat an eye. There was no problem.
No. Okay.
What do you mean?
Oh, no, I was just going to point out, I did that when I was still in high school.
Yeah, there you go.
So I was in high school. I had a friend, and she was going. She knew that I'd been in trouble with the law and stuff like this. So she asked me. She said, "Hey, criminals? Can you get me a fake ID?" And I said, and so she was thinking like go to a place that prints fake IDs and stuff like that. I just got someone who was an adult who looked like her to give me her ID, her military ID. And then she just reported it missing and stuff. And then my friend had an ID and she kind of looked like her. And that was it. Problem solved. And no one ever caught her. She bought alcohol all the time with that fake ID.
There you go. No problem.
Pretty easy.
So this kind of thing is really quite common. And once again, nobody really cares. Nobody's on it. Another thing about the Boulder jihadi that we spoke about last week. What's his name? Mohammed Sabri Soleiman. Been investigating his background, of course. And Mohammed Sabri Soleiman, turns out that one of the things he did earlier, before he threw the Molotov cocktails at the Jewish protesters in Boulder, he set a dog on fire, David. Now, why do you think somebody would... Why are we talking about a guy who set a dog on fire on a show called This Week in Jihad?
There's Muhammad had a jihad against dogs. And this is something that we see over and over again. We'll see stories about people poisoning dogs or putting up signs saying, get your dogs out of here because it's a Muslim area now and so on. Mm-hmm. But so Muhammad, according to the stories, had a meeting with Diha al-Kalbi, and Diha al-Kalbi, who ironically is called Diha the dog for some reason. Maybe because they have a problem with dogs. Yep, that's what al-Kalbi means.
That's his name.
So it's weird. It's weird. It's just a weird connection. Why is the guy who's called the dog the one who had the problem with dogs? But anyway, so maybe
that's why.
Rebelled against his name. I've been called a dog my entire life, and I hate dogs now. I hate them. So anyway, Muhammad had a rendezvous with D. Al-Kalbi at his house. Of course, it's the angel Gabriel, according to the story. But Muhammad's going to meet with the angel Gabriel, and then Angel Gabriel, a.k.a. D. Al-Kalbi, stood him up, and then Muhammad didn't know why, and then found out there's a dog. There was a puppy. There was a puppy hiding in the house. And so then that's when he decided, all dogs have to be killed. We can't have anyone interfering with my rendezvous with D. Al-Kalbi. And so he ordered his followers, and it said they would, at that point, they were killing all dogs. They were killing all dogs. So they were even like getting the dogs of the Bedouin people and killing them and stuff. They just went on this huge dog massacre. And then eventually some of his followers complained, it's like, hey, we've got dogs for like hunting and stuff like that. What's up with that? And then he changed the ruling to allow certain kinds of dogs. But as far as like dogs as pets and so on, there's no concept of that in Islam. Those have to die. And you just have this, you'll have this revulsion towards dogs in general and a desire to kill them for lots of these guys.
Mass killing of dogs in Turkey right now, been going on for months. All right, Tajikistan sent us over a 39-year-old male born there in Tajikistan, a citizen of Russia, and he was arrested in Philadelphia. And it turned out that he did not have a visa. He's an illegal alien, and Tajikistan has him on their wanted list because it turns out he also is a member of Al-Qaeda. So we got an Al-Qaeda chief in the Arabian Peninsula saying, kill Trump, kill Vance, kill Hexeth, kill Rubio, kill everybody, kill all the Jews. And then we have Al-Qaeda guys apparently strolling into the country without any legal justification to be here.
Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about, Robert.
No. Nothing whatsoever. Okay, let's see. We got Mohammed Abdullah Warsami. Where is he? I know I got him. Here we go. There he is. Mohammed Abdullah Warsami was a refugee. He came here as a refugee to Canada, actually. And he was he was tied to Osama bin Laden in various ways. He apparently provided support for Al-Qaeda in terms of training and money in from 2000 to 2003. But then he came to Toronto as a refugee, lived in Toronto, and went over to Montreal, got arrested in Montreal because he threatened to kill a large number of people. Now, this is after. He's walking around threatening to kill a large number of people after the fact in 2009 he pleaded guilty in federal court in Minneapolis to one count of conspiring to provide material support and resources to the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. So he pleads guilty to being Al-Qaeda in 2009. 16 years later, he's in Montreal threatening people. It seems to me that if they'd handled this problem and deported him, kept him out of the country, kept him out of North America in 2009, maybe he wouldn't have been in Montreal threatening people in 2025.
This is an ongoing problem that we've pointed out over and over and over again. Same problem with the ISIS jihadis, that you have people who are threatening people or associating with terror, or they joined ISIS even or something like that. They joined a terrorist organization, but they didn't actually kill a bunch of people, and so it's a lesser crime. And so these guys get sentenced to 8 or 10 or 15 years and so on. Guess what? That means they're coming home. And you think, oh, they're going to go to prison and they're going to be sitting there with the Quran and the Hadith and a bunch of their fellow Muslims, and they're going to come out as pure as the driven snow and super nice and loving and so on, because they've absorbed the idea that Islam is actually this wonderful thing, and it's just being misrepresented by people. And so all these people absorb that idea, and they think that going to prison and just having time to reflect on what Islam really teaches, that's going to solve the problem. They're going to come out all nice, and they come out ready to kill. Isn't that weird?
It's just inexplicable. I just don't understand it at all. Here's another inexplicable story out of France, David. Always a good rich vein for this kind of thing. French family, they have an 8-year-old daughter. I'll bet you can see what's coming already. And what's coming in this case is an Algerian migrant who showed up in their house, broke into their house with a pitchfork while the family's home. He's not trying to rob the place. And once he gets inside, he exposes his genitals to the family and demands the girl. He says to the parents, "Give me the girl or I'll kill you." So that's France. He is actually a refugee from Algeria. Although there's not really a big hot war going on in Algeria that he's a refugee from. But in any case, he came to France and he was ordered deported last year. But he is still there.
And I'm sure he'll still be there another 5 years from now, Robert.
Yep, probably do it again. Here's an interesting story also from France, also a sexual crime. 12-year-old girl was kidnapped, insulted, humiliated, beaten, and raped repeatedly because she was Jewish by a gang of Muslim teens ages 13 and 14. But what's interesting about this, David, aside from all that in itself, is that one of the rapists ordered the girl to convert to Islam and repeat the Shahada. So we have a very strange scenario here, really, strange to Western ears, that you have this girl being repeatedly raped, repeatedly insulted and abused, and they say it's because she's Jewish, and they pressure her, while they're raping her, they pressure her to convert to Islam. Now, the view of Islam that most Westerners still have, despite your best efforts and mine, is that it's a religion that is like every other religion that teaches magnanimity and kindness and generosity and humility and everything else. And so, presumably, these pious religious young men would not dream of performing a heinous crime like a rape, and particularly would not associate it with their wonderful, peaceful religion. And yet, they immediately go there and make their rape all about trying to get her to convert to Islam. Can you explain what on earth is going on here?
Well, didn't we hear the same thing from victims of the grooming gangs in the UK?
Indeed we did.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that weird?
It is weird. What could possibly account for it?
I have no idea, Robert. Maybe it's actually connected to what the Quran says that we've already talked about, that Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures. Allah doesn't care about them. Allah has no love for these worst of creatures. You can slaughter a cow. You can slaughter a sheep. Guess what? A cow and a sheep are better than Jews and Christians, according to the Quran. So you could do what you want, and Muhammad and his followers all took sex captives and so on. We've talked about this before, that the difference between now and back then, there is a difference. That back then you would conquer someone and then you would take their women and daughters and so on as your sex slaves. And people pointing out, but see, that's different. Yeah, we would take women and girls as our captives, and then we would do whatever we want with them. But that's not what's going on with the grooming gangs and these other people who are just going around raping girls. And it's like, yeah, because back then you had to conquer someone. You had to conquer someone if you're going to take their women and daughters as sex slaves. They had no concept of a culture that would just let you do it and would just invite you in and say, yeah, go ahead. Here's open access to our daughters. They had no concept of a culture like that. So from a modern Islamic perspective, why conquer them if they're just going to give them to you? Mm-hmm. You don't need to conquer them. They're your property. And Westerners are basically saying, we feel so bad because of things our great-great-grandfathers did in your countries. They were oppressors. You Muslims, you never oppressed anybody, and therefore we'll give you our daughters. Just take them. We can't condemn you for it.
Yep. And the rapists think, well, we're humiliating this girl, and we're allowed to humiliate this girl because she's an unbeliever and she's a Jew, the most hostile of the unbelievers to the Muslims, and so she has it coming. And meanwhile, she will be reminded of her humiliation as her suffering in this world for rejecting Islam. So we will also appeal to her to convert to Islam at the same time, in the midst of the same act of humiliating her, so that she can see how she can be relieved of this humiliation.
And they can actually view that as something good. The same way that Dawa guys view lying as something good, right? Hey, if I'm lying to you, but that causes you to convert to Islam based on all my lies, then, I mean, you get to spend eternity. I've helped you. I've helped you with my lying, right? And the Dawa guys actually believe that stuff. But guess what? These guys, hey, if we're raping people for not being Muslims, and we're raping them and showing them how they deserve to be treated as non-Muslims, this will make them want to convert to Islam, where they won't be treated like this. And so we're actually helping them. We're doing this girl a favor by raping her and so on.
That's right. And also, somebody was asking in here, so I'll just clarify. This is indeed a story. This took place a year ago in June 2024. But it's a story this week because the trial is just starting actually today. And so I don't know what happened the first day of the trial, but that's why it's back in the news, this incident.
What'll happen is, what? We didn't know we're not allowed to rape her. We're just, what? It's completely normal in our religion. Are you condemning our religion? No, we're going to give you medals and make you all leaders in our country. That's
actually very likely to be what'll happen here. There have been many others who have said, yeah, we didn't know this was against the law here, and then they get let off easy. And this is not, we haven't even gotten to the stupid infidel section for the week, David. My goodness, I think the stupidest infidel of all is Miguel Angel Moratinos, but maybe we talked about him last week? Yeah, I think maybe we did. I'm sorry. I think I added him in by mistake. He is the UN Special Envoy to Combat Islamophobia, and he has said that the West needs to institute criminal penalties for negative attitudes toward Islam.
Certainly does.
The problem is lack of education, David. If people just knew about Islam, they would love it. Yeah, it's because we don't know about Islam. Yeah, we got also Mark Carney, of course, the Prime Minister of Canada. And he very famously this week he delivered a congratulatory speech on Eid al-Adha. And he said that we need to all come together around the values of Eid. And he said that community generosity and sacrifice are the values of Eid. And he said, these are Muslim values, these are Canadian values. And so he's saying that we need to all come together and celebrate these Muslim values, Muslims and non-Muslims. And then I picked up a tweet that I put at Jihad Watch listing a few of the things that are Muslim values that are not Canadian values. We don't stone women for reporting rape. We don't force marry underage girls. We don't allow Sharia. We don't go to Muslim countries and demand they change their laws to suit us. Muslim values, Canadian values. So that's Mark Carney. He may be the stupid infidel of the week. I can't even get him off the screen. There he goes.
Well, bright times ahead for Canada.
Oh yeah. Speaking of stupid infidels, this is Thiago Avila. He's in the red circle. And he was the organizer of the flotilla that Greta Thunberg took to Gaza. She was going to give supplies to Gaza, and then she got stopped by the Israelis and sent out of the country. It's been kind of a sideshow this week to all the grim news. And Thiago Avila is here with various jihadis, and they're all screaming the Houthi slogan, Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to Israel, victory for Islam. As far as I know, the guy's not a Muslim. He's just a leftist who thinks he's being multicultural.
Well, Greta would agree with that.
Yep.
So, I mean, you could just name your boat that. It's like, hey, guys, everyone who wants death to Israel and death to America and death to the West and so on, climb aboard.
Yep. All right, there's some people that are mad in Italy, in the town of Monfalcone, and this is because a church gave its courtyard to Muslims for prayer. And you can see a large number of Muslims. This is an outdoor space. You can see the grass here a little bit along the side. Large number of Muslims gathered in this church courtyard to pray, and they had a statue of Jesus there, and that's what's circled in red, that the statue of Jesus was covered with a towel. And a lot of people were angry and pointed out the story I picked up from the Italian press. It says, look, if we went to Saudi Arabia, we wouldn't even be allowed to pray in public. And if we did and dared to cover some Muslim symbol, well, and there'd be all sorts of trouble. And people are upset about this, but I think, well, where you been? You know, go to Hagia Sophia, which was the grandest church in the Christian world for 1,000 years. It's full of icons. And what happened to them? They were covered over with these big medallions that proclaim Allah and the Shahada and so on. So what do they expect?
Yeah, we should demand that we can go to Mecca and pray in the Grand Mosque, and we're going to want them to cover up the Black Stone because that is a bunch of idiotic pagan nonsense.
Oh, they'll be all over that. They'll be happy to do that, David, in the spirit of tolerance. Anyway, yeah, they don't. It seems like I understand why Italians are angry about it, but I think I'm surprised that they're surprised about it, and it seems like they still don't know at this late date that Islam is a supremacist religion with a replacement theology, and so there's no room for Christian expression. And the Christians, if the Muslims take over Italy, are going to have to act like the Christians in the Middle East and go behind closed doors, make no public display of their faith. It's against Islamic law.
Yeah, it's this weird thing where people are told one thing their entire lives by everyone. So they go to school and they're told Islam is wonderful, it's peaceful. Anyone who says otherwise or that Islam is anything different, they're just racists and Islamophobes and bigots. And they turn on the news and they hear the same thing. And their politicians give a speech and they hear the same thing. And everyone tells them the same thing. And so they think, oh, Islam's just wonderful. Oh, what's going on? Why do you have to cover up Jesus? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
But then they'll forget about it 10 seconds later, and then something else will happen the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and it's always, this is weird. This is just weird.
And the next time Muslims want a place to pray, some church will happily give it over. And yet, where have you ever seen Christians being allowed to pray in a mosque because they don't have another place? Or even outside a mosque? Has that ever happened?
Maybe. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. And I watch this stuff every day.
But just imagine, I mean, what would the situation be where Christians want to pray in a mosque or have an obsession with praying in a mosque?
They wouldn't actually.
We really want to, there's no other place in the world for us to pray, so we really want to go pray in this mosque. Not a situation. Because why? Because we don't have that impulse that we have to take over and we have to do this show of strength to show we're strong by taking over their places of worship. That's built into Islam, and churches keep, what is your religion obsessed with? Taking over other people's places of worship to show how strong you are. So guess what? Come on in, show everyone how strong you are. Get a bunch of pictures. Yeah, we'll cover things up for you. We'll cover things up for you so you can show how strong you are.
There you go. Meanwhile, we do see what happens to Christians in Muslim lands. Let's go to Nigeria, and we have in Benue State, 85 Christians killed in a wave of coordinated attacks. All right, that's one. 85 Christians in Benue State. Then we have in Plateau State, also this week, jihadis killed 9 Christians one day after slaughtering 27 the day before. So that's 36 there. in Plateau State. So 85 in Benue State, 36 in Plateau State. That's Christians being murdered by Islamic jihadis. Then in Borno State, there were 9 people killed by IEDs that jihadis put at a bus stop, striking terror in the enemies of Allah. In Congo, jihadis detonated a bomb in a public market, killing 4 people, injuring many more. And in Uganda, would have been probably much worse, but there were two women actually on their way to a Roman Catholic shrine in Kampala, and they blew up when the suicide bomb that one of them had strapped on blew up prematurely, so they didn't kill anybody but themselves. But it was clear they were heading for the Roman Catholic shrine. Probably many people would have been murdered there. So on the one hand, we have the Christians giving spaces to the Muslims for them to pray in Italy, and we've seen it elsewhere in Europe. And then on the other hand, we have Christians in Africa being wholesale slaughtered by Islamic jihadis. Why the disparity, David? What's the difference?
Different beliefs.
Surely we all believe in tolerance, and there must be a Muslims somewhere who are practicing reciprocity to all this Christian generosity, no?
Yeah, that's the theory. You just keep doing everything they want, and eventually their hearts will melt. That's the theory.
That's the theory.
Never happens, but doesn't matter how many times your theory is falsified, you just have to keep your theory going.
That's right. And so a bunch of pilgrims went to the Islamic Republic of Iran, a bunch of pilgrims from the Islamic Republic of Iran went to the Hajj, and they chanted, they did the annual disavowal of polytheists ceremony, which must be real cheerful, and they chanted death to America and death to Israel at the Hajj during the disavowal of polytheist ceremony. So you have the most sacred place in Islam. You have the most sacred time in Islam. You have Muslims performing this pilgrimage that's once in a lifetime, that is one of the most important things they have to do. And they spend it calling for death to non-Muslims. They must be misunderstanding Islam, right?
Lots of people are, Robert. Lots of people are.
So many people misunderstand Islam. It's very hard to understand. Very, very hard to understand.
Yeah, it's basically, it's the only thing. It's the only topic in the world where the less you know about it, the more of an expert you are.
It's absolutely true.
Like everything else, okay, if you're going to be a mathematician or something like this, well, you probably need to know a lot about math. And if someone didn't know even basic math, you wouldn't consider them an expert. But on Islam, the people who know the most about it, they've obviously got everything wrong. And the politicians and journalists and completely westernized Muslims who wouldn't know a Quran verse from a reading in a phone book or something like that, they're the experts. That's how it works.
Indeed. And here's some experts out of the UK. This is the UK's official website about countering terrorist ideologies. And it says, right-wing terrorism, extreme right-wing terrorism, is the active or vocal support of ideologies that advocate discrimination or violence against minority groups. Particularly, the idea of Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups. That's right-wing terrorism that the UK government will assiduously prosecute. But are there any religious or ethnic groups, what do they say, any ethnic or cultural groups that are against integration?
Yeah, I can think of a big one.
What? Surely you don't mean Islam.
I in fact do, Robert.
Oh,
I said it. I regret
Islamophobia.
nothing. I regret nothing. I apologize for nothing. I said it.
All right. Well, maybe this will make you apologize. This is a real horror story out of the UK also. This poor man, a Muslim who is in a care home because he suffers from a debilitating illness and he is unable to walk. And so he was served lunch last week. And David, you're sitting down, right? David, he was served ham. I'm amazed. Yep.
First the Holocaust, now this, Robert. Like, how can things get any worse?
Yeah. The poor guy, he says, I felt quite disgusted, to be honest. I've never had pork in my life, and I took some bites and knew immediately something was not right. I started vomiting as I was so disgusted. This is against my beliefs and my religion. I was supposed to be having a cheese and onion quiche. When the food arrived, I even asked if it was halal. When I looked inside, there were bits of ham inside it. It was shocking.
Yeah, what are the odds that with all the millions of food service workers and all the restaurants in the world, some people are occasionally going to make a mistake and give you the wrong thing with the wrong ingredients? Shocker. Shocker.
That's the thing about it. Over the years at Jihad Watch, I've covered several stories of this kind, and this is in the Lancashire Telegraph. This one, and it's a perfectly respectable media outlet, and it is not alone in showcasing with the big story these accounts of Muslims claiming that they were maliciously served pork. And I think back, I have indeed gone to restaurants and been served the wrong thing, something I did not order. And the media was not interested. There was never a story in the New York Times or the Washington Post or anywhere about me being served the wrong thing. And yet these stories, they always have legs and they become a big thing.
Yeah, and it'll even happen in like more serious ways. Like someone will say, "Hey, does this have something in it that I'm allergic to," or something like that? And no, the server doesn't always know, and so on. And so they can be wrong about things. They can make mistakes, and then all of a sudden, someone their throat swells up, and they have a medical emergency.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually not interpreted as, "Oh, you see, they're trying to kill you." It's just no. People make mistakes sometimes. Happens.
And the thing is, it's of course designed to serve a narrative. And the narrative is that Muslims are victims, that they're discriminated against in the West, and so they need special accommodation. And so this kind of thing is designed to shore up that narrative. They don't actually have any actual instances of Islamophobia. Muslims are not being harassed and discriminated against on some large scale in the United States or in Britain. And so they have to have stories, make something out of stories like this because they got nothing else. All right, meanwhile, another story out of the UK. Mohammed Al-Mail. Let me see, I got him here. There he is. There's Mohammed Al-Mail at a pro-Hamas rally with a bullhorn and Palestinian scarf. And he said, "I love October 7th. And I love an organization that starts with H." So he's openly professing support for Hamas and or Hezbollah. He is openly praising the massacre of 1,200 Israelis on October 7th. And he was just granted asylum in Britain.
This weird situation again, Robert, of you kind of think at some point, okay, you guys deserve what you are basically begging for.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't say that with complete confidence because there are all sorts of people who aren't begging for it, but those are going to be the victims.
Yes.
The politicians who are doing all this, guess what? They live in the rich areas. They are not the ones who have to live with the consequences of their actions and so on. It's the regular people who aren't asking for this. They're the ones who have to live with the consequences.
Precisely. And so Britain, well, the politicians are destroying it. We talked last week about the conviction of Hamid Koskun for burning the Quran. They're bringing blasphemy laws back to Britain. Britain has a very dark future if they don't turn this around. And we will end up there. Go to the Super Chats. It's Super Chats time, ladies and gentlemen, so get them in now if you haven't already. And David, the first one we got is, Songs of Relief, saying Ali Dawa voice. Maybe you should read this one in an Ali Dawa voice.
Are you having trouble keeping up with your 90 wives? Try new Ali Dawa sesame oil suppositories, guaranteed to please.
Robert, you weren't watching the previous live stream, but a Muslim was appealing to a certain scholar, and Jai and DOC pulled up what was known about that scholar, and he was a scholar who still believed in mutta and had all these different mutta wives and had all these kids and had to give the kids names so that they would know not to marry each other and so on, because he was banging so many different women and so on. And it was said that he would put sesame oil up his bottom as an aphrodisiac so that he could perform with all his mutta wives. So this is the scholar we're all supposed to listen to.
I'm not going to even ask. All right. It's just best not to even get into it. Loaves of Bread says, has Imam Google delivered any Super Chat revenue? Yes, oddly enough, yes. But I did get a warning the other day. Hatun very kindly made me a short out of something I said when we were going through our Quran study, and they gave me a warning on that and banned it from ads. So I don't know how long it's going to last, but while it lasts, we're going to enjoy it, and we'll do what we can. In any case, thank you very much, all of you, for your support. And if it continues, we'll try to improve for the facilities over here. Bo Rudder says, my jihad is believing jihad is just a struggle. It's not a bad jihad.
That is rough.
Yeah, it's a tough one, though. Abu Bakr Al-Puff Daddy, good evening, Dr. Wood. Mr. Spencer, rumors are swirling Israel will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. What is your opinion? Should USA pursue talks? Well, I think it's very likely that they will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. It's kind of necessary because Iran will certainly nuke them if they get the chance. Should the USA pursue talks? No, these guys are liars. As a matter of fact, Taqiyya is, you know something, a lot of the Islamic apologists in the West like to say Taqiyya was invented by Spencer, and actually it's a Shiite idea that the Sunnis don't practice. That's a lie, of course, because it's in the Quran, in chapter 3, verse 28. But it is true that the whole idea of it as a theological concept does come from the Shiites. They elaborated it as a theological idea in Islam. They have a very elaborate theology of it, and it's central. It is not incidental. It is central to Shiite Islam. And so the idea that a Shiite regime that is committed to Shiite Islam is going to be up and up with us, honest and upfront with unbelievers, it's inconceivable.
Yeah, the only with Iran, you're dealing with complete lunatics as far as the leaders are concerned. It's basically a giant death cult. Like Hamas is a death cult. They want death. That's Iran. They want war, and all this war is going to bring about the Mahdi and so on. And so how do you plan on getting along with them long term, or expecting them to abide by their agreements and so on? It's like all you'd be doing is putting off the problem a little bit. And even when they make deals, it's just, hey, we need a break right now from whatever's going on, so we need a little pause while we regroup and reorganize and so on. The only case you can make for wanting to negotiate and so on is if you think that the people are going to rise up and take over the government, because that looks like something that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. It looks like the regime will eventually be toppled. Only 40% of the population of Iran still considers themselves Muslims in any sense. So you're talking, this is a Muslim minority country right now. You've got tons of people who are fed up with it. The The regime, the only support the regime has anymore is from the extreme hardliners, the death cult types, right? That's why they can't compromise on things like hijab. They can't lose the support of the one group that still supports, that still props up the leadership and so on. So the only case for not bombing the crap out of them is just it's going to implode anyway here in the very near future. But that's not something you can play around with. Like, you don't want to gamble on that, right? You don't want to gamble and say, oh, things are going to work out, and then they build a nuclear bomb or something like that. So,
indeed,
yeah. If I were Israel, anything that looked like a nuclear facility, I would bomb the crap out of it.
Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy, those awesome ABN channel days. I remember Robert saying, "My jihad is exercise," and David piped in, "Muhammad is the world's greatest Pilates instructor."
Yeah, I don't recall saying that, but that sounds like something I would say.
Yep. Skyscraper philosopher, breaking U.S. withdraw diplomatic personnel from Iraq. Much speculation right now that Israel or U.S. will strike Iranian nuclear tech in coming hours. We shall see. And Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy, Spencer, can you remind us again about the Anwan brothers scandal, please? What happened? Why was it significant? What investigation has occurred? My goodness, I'm not sure I remember exactly the guys you're referring to, but there were a couple of brothers who were in the U.S. government, given positions of great responsibility. They seemed to be tied in with jihadis in some way, but the whole thing was swept under the rug. The very little reliable information came out, so I can't really give you any update on that. I think they went to Pakistan, those two guys. Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy, Spencer and Wood, what is your reaction to King Charles bestowing knighthood on London Mayor Sadiq Khan? And can you kindly explain British fascination with Arab culture? Is it to do with a movie? Yes. Lawrence of Arabia, you mean? Yeah. Well, he certainly had a fascination with Arabic culture. T.E. Lawrence that predated the movie, because that's why they made the movie. The British worked with the Arabs to fight the Ottomans in World War I. They hooked up with the the Arabian rebels against the Ottomans that included the House of Saud, the Wahhabis, and so on. And they've been great pals ever since, really. Seth, that real Jewish ex-spy in the chat, are you still interacting with Bat Yaor, Eurabia? Yeah, I hear from her now and again. She's a lovely lady, great pioneer, wonderful scholar who exposed... People talk about Eurabia as a conspiracy theory. She actually has the receipts. You should all read that book, Eurabia. She has the records of agreements that the European Commission made with the Arab League back in the 70s to foster mass migration of Muslims into Europe. So she's the real deal. Zutsut, yeah. It's proven Muhammad was involved in 2 moon splittings. One on... Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And Crazy Normie YT, what sources do you all recommend to learn more about the pagan roots of Islam? Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. I have some information on that in the Critical Quran, as well as Did Muhammad Exist and Muhammad a Critical Biography. There are some of the older scholars like William St. Clair Tisdall and
that's what I was thinking of. Matter of fact, I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look up Tisdall's, and I'll put that in there. I'll give a link to that.
Okay, thank you.
Just gotta look it up. I can find it. I remember where to find it.
All right. There was another one too, but I can't remember his name. Getting old is great. Okay, Zutzut RS, do you believe the Muhammad and the night with Azut is false? Because Muhammad is false? That also means Mo was not a pedo if he never existed. See, this kind of thing constantly comes up, and I really don't understand why. It's not really hard. Think about this. You know the play Macbeth by Shakespeare? Maybe you read it in school. You should have if you didn't. Now, Macbeth, I know people are going to say, Macbeth was real. Okay, Macbeth is fiction. It's not real. There was a Macbeth, but The story that Shakespeare tells is Shakespeare's story. He wrote the play. Now, Macbeth says and does stuff in the play. You can talk about what Macbeth says and does. If there were a Macbethian religion, then they would be take very seriously what Macbeth says and does. But that wouldn't make it real. It's a story. Now, it's the same thing with Muhammad. There may have been a Muhammad, but there is no historical veracity to the stories of Muhammad that we have about the Prophet of Islam. So, it's very important to know what those stories say, because Muslims believe them and act upon them. And the Az-Zut story goes a long way toward explaining why homosexuality is so broadly tolerated in many areas of the Islamic world. There are other stories for that as well, and the pearly boys passages in the Quran and so on. But that doesn't mean any of it's real. It's no realer than Macbeth. The historical value of the stories is one question, but whether they're historically accurate or not, Muslims believe them, and so we should know what they say. I hope that's clear. If it's not clear, let me know. I'll try again, but I explain this all in the books.
I just put a link to original sources of the Quran by Tilsdall, and he includes the good stuff in there. Everyone, it's stuff that was stolen from Jewish sources, from Christian sources, but also pagan
yes,
practices and so on.
Yes, indeed. Bo Rudder says, "Free Palestine of Hamas." Indeed. Knows too much, like an Ahmad, zooted for the very first time. Okay.
That's a song. That's a Madonna song.
Like an Ahmad, zooted for the very first time.
Okay. Knows too much. Can you do a posh British accent, David?
Oh, this is Shakespeare.
Ah, yes.
To zoot or not to zoot? That is the question that perplexed Ibn Masud that fateful night. He shielded his behind and said, "Enough moons have been split today."
Oh, dear. Okay, thank you. Yosef, can you argue Momo made Islam to hide he was gay? He didn't hide it real well, did he?
No.
Bo Rudder, Zoot was pro-doggy but anti-dog. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
I apologize, Robert.
This is going south fast here.
I apologize for spreading all this Al-Zut stuff, not in the way the Al-Zut spreaded Muhammad's cheeks, but in a different way.
Yeah, I just learned Jutland is a peninsula in Denmark, yes. All right. Daylight, here for one time. Can you explain taqiyya? Thank you. Yeah, taqiyya is covering the truth, pretending to be on the side of your enemies. It's from chapter 3, verse 28 of the Quran. Do not take the unbelievers as your friends and protectors in preference to believers. Whoever does this has nothing to do with the law, unless you're doing it to guard yourselves against them, which is the exception that carries this huge weight, that you can pretend to be the friend of your enemies in order to fool them into complacency.
And I would encourage, Daylight here, I would encourage you can go to the tafsir, the commentary of Ibn Kathir on that verse. So go to Q Tafsir, QTAFSIR.com. That gives you the commentary of Ibn Kathir. Go to the commentary on Surah 3, verse 28, and look at what it says. So yes, it became a huge thing in Shia Islam because Shias were the minority very frequently, and they were being even killed by Sunni Muslims. And so it was a big issue for them to be able to say, "What? No, I'm not Shia. I'm Sunni, man." And so they needed it. But keep in mind, it does come from the Quran, and the commentary of Ibn Kathir, interesting because that's a Sunni commentary, and he quotes Muhammad's companions Al-Hasan and
Abu ad-Darda.
Yeah, Abu ad-Darda, who comment on it, and Al-Hasan says that taqiyya is allowed until the day of resurrection. Taqiyya is allowed until the day of resurrection, and then Abu ad-Darda who says, we smile in the faces of some people, although our hearts curse them. Meaning, yeah, well, of course, we love you guys. We love you guys. I really want to kill you. And so it was understood. Hey, this is directly from the Quran. And what's interesting about 328 is when a Muslim defends taqiyya, they'll just say, "Oh, well, yeah, this is just if someone's got a gun to your head and they're like, hey, are you a Muslim?" And you can say, "No, I'm not," and that'll to protect your life and so on. Come on, 328 is not saying that if someone's got a gun to your head and is saying, "We're going to kill you for being a Muslim," then you can lie about it. It's saying, do not be friendly towards these people unless it's to deceive them. Do not be friendly unless you're pretending to be friendly, because you need to get along with them while you build up your strength before you can actually conquer them.
That's it.
That is, yep.
Thank you, sir. Flippy says left-wing party in Japan are trying to pass a hate crime legislation for people criticizing Muslim immigration. Yeah, just like the West. Mother Hulda says, thank God for the First Amendment. I have a beautiful daughter, and that's not happening to her. God willing, may God protect you and your daughter. Nada Simic says, the religion of peace.
I think you mean Second Amendment, Mother Hulda. Second Amendment is the more relevant one if someone's coming for your daughter.
You are correct, sir. The religion of peace is like the peaceful protests in L.A. Send Greta to L.A. Yes. Okay, Zut's Gone Wild. David, please do a show to educate how in Africa, where Muslim in North meet Christians in South, there's literally a line where blood is spilled every day. We've discussed that many times on this show.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much every week.
Yep. Flippy says, on the PBD podcast, Tommy Robinson said he was refused entry to the USA. Shame on Trump for not giving him an asylum. He's currently in the Bahamas.
I'd give Tommy Robinson and his entire family asylum in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about that whatsoever. Did PBD ask him how he could build bridges and get along with Muslims?
Yeah. Especially after... yeah. Now, Tommy, a lot of people in the Muslim world want to completely kill you. So tell us how you can work together against the LGBTQ initiative.
Yes.
For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, Robert and Brother Rashid were on the PBD podcast with two Muslims, and the Muslims made it completely clear because they said it repeatedly. Yes, Rashid, because he's an apostate, would be killed by these guys if they got their way. And Robert would be killed because critics will also be killed. And so after they made it perfectly clear and stated, yes, if we get our way, both of you are going to be executed. After they said it, then PBD goes, okay, so let's talk about how you guys can work together in combating the LGBTQ. It's like, are you insane?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you? And it is clear. It's clear what his intention was. It was going to be, let's get these guys together and we're going to find out what they agree on, and they're going to agree and they're going to work together, and I will have built these bridges and stuff. And then you get them on the show and we want to kill these guys. And then he just kind of proceeds with his prepared point about how we're all going to work together. And so it's like, what is wrong with you, dude? Yep. Read the room.
Okay. Whoops. We got a super sticker from Isaiah 53. Thank you very much. We got a super sticker from Tanya. Thank you very much. We got Jeff Zhervelokov. Hey, love you guys. Mom's family's from Sweden. Is there any hope for that country? There's always hope. Remember the state motto of South Carolina, Dum Spiro Spero. While I breathe, I hope.
Yeah, guys, so we've explained this a million times, but it's basically like Islam is still like small minority in a lot of these places. It's a big minority in certain areas of these places, but enough people could deal with this at any point. And I don't mean by mass murdering people and so on. I'm saying, okay, we need to recognize there's a problem. We need to crack down. You do not get to stay. And if you have crossed the line, you're out of here. You're gone. We're kicking you out. People could deal with this very quickly. They just haven't gotten to the point where they're willing to actually make the hard decisions and be called intolerant and be called Islamophobes and actually deal with the problem for the safety and welfare of all their future generations and so on. So people lack the will to do what would be required to deal with the problem and so on. And the real issue is the longer you put it off, the more difficult it's going to be. There was a time when you could have dealt with this completely peacefully. Don't bring in anyone who has these ideas. Very simple. And if you have these ideas, go back where we brought you from. It was easy to deal with. The longer you put it off, the more you're going to probably have some sort of bloodbath reaction to trying to deal with it.
Yep, no doubt about it. All right, Zoot Zoot says, do you think California should give piece of land to the far-left commies and jihadi Hamas supporters? Call it Zootophonia. Okay.
They just give them all of California, man. California's
such a pretty place.
Take all the jihadis and all the extreme leftists, and we'll give you California, right? Just build a wall around that.
It's a beautiful place. It's paradisal. It's a shame to give it to nuts.
That's the thing. It's like, I mean, that should be Exhibit A for all future generations in terms of the ideas. It's like, if you can ruin California,
yeah,
if you could take that, by all accounts, should be the paradise of the United States, and if you can just ruin that and turn it into an absolute hellhole, you've got some problems with your ideas, and you need to keep your ideas to yourself because you just screw things up.
Well said. Jacob Mathai, Pakistan has just made the head of anti-terrorism in the UN. Now all the terrorists will have a party time. Any opinions?
That was like making Iran the head of the women's rights wing and so on.
The opinion is the U.S. is nuts. The UN, rather. Well, the U.S. too. Anyway, Gazutzut says, thank you. RS makes sense. Well, I appreciate that. Let's see. K Forcer says, Robert, have you talked to Peter Kreeft at all after you had that debate years ago? I wonder if he's changed his posture towards Islam at all. I have not actually. That was, my goodness, that was like 12 years ago I debated Peter Kreeft.
Yeah, is Peter Kreeft still around? He was already old back then.
Yeah, he's very old. He must be about 90. But I have not had any contact with him. If anybody out there knows him, or Peter, if you're watching, say hello. He was my professor. He was a good man. I think he's very 88. Wrong about Islam, but 88, there you go. I hope he's awakened to reality since then.
Yeah, 88. But no, I used to listen to his lectures because he's an awesome professor of philosophy and so on. Just doesn't know a whole lot about Islam.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Yosef says, from the river to the sea, Zudestein will be free. Yes. Okay.
Hey, I just looked. He got his PhD at Fordham. That's me. Not like me.
Oh yeah, you should have said hello while you were both there. Yeah.
Yeah, we were the same age.
When I had him for a professor, we used to play ping pong after class, and at the beginning he was so much better at it than I was. He would actually get on his knees to play the game and still beat me.
To humiliate you.
Yes, it was very Islamic. Anyway, by the end we were about even. By the end of the academic year. Anyway, that brings us to the end. Thank you all. If there's any more jihad, you know where we'll be. Until then, pray, hope, and don't worry.